and then we'll get started. How's the weather in Delaware today, Catherine?
It is pouring.
Mm-hmm.
It's very Seattle-like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of nice though, you know, cozy, rainy beach day. Good for doing a webinar.
Yep, exactly. I like having these backgrounds where I'm showing the place I would rather be right now than in rainy Seattle. So
I'm trying to identify what that is. It looks lush.
It's Pacific Rim National Park up in Vancouver Island, BC.
Nice.
That was last summer, 2 summers ago. Alrighty, well, I think enough banter. I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick. And thank you everyone for joining us. It's nice to have you. I'm just going to pull up a couple notes here real quick. So I'm Mark Allgard. I know my name. I'm Director of Client Strategy for Momentum, and we're a firm that really takes a people-centric approach to delivering buildings that help credit unions thrive. And today's webinar is the first in a 3-part series where we attempt to develop a new paradigm for the retail branch in the post-COVID world. So next month, we're going to look at branch in the context of integrated digital experiences. And in December, we're going to explore market strategy as a way to differentiate and succeed. But today we're talking about brand and how a strong understanding and expression of one's brand promise will help drive branch traffic in the post-pandemic world. So joining me today and joining our discussion is Catherine Carr. Hi, Catherine. She's a brand expert and thinker who was behind product development and marketing at Hasbro, Haiku Deck, Microsoft, and my favorite, Cranium, the board game from a few years ago. And so my team at Momentum relies on Catherine in the development and expression of our own brand. So she helped us understand really unequivocally what is both innate to our team, what we're passionate about, and connect that to the outcomes our credit union partners are looking for. She trained us in how to express our brand promise to our market in a clear and tangible way. And one thing that excites me about bringing Catherine into this conversation is that, while she has a bit of experience working with financial institutions, she has a ton of experience in consumer products, things like Brooks Shoes and Ravensburger Puzzles, brands I'm sure you're familiar with. And I think this might just give our conversation that unique angle that credit unions are going to need as they try to draw branch traffic back in over the next couple of years. So what is prompting this conversation? In a time like we've been in for the last 8 months or so, a prolonged crisis, what I've come to learn is that we search out and process information much differently than we do in normal times. It's difficult for us to plan for the future, but at the same time, we go into overdrive, searching for clues and indications about where things are headed. And what I noticed myself as I'm searching for these clues and information, I noticed the scores of retail establishments closing permanently around my downtown Seattle office. And I read about this rapid shift to digital delivery even for many products like groceries that had been forecast to be the backbone of bricks and mortar retail for years, as far as people could forecast. And I heard from clients, credit union clients, community bank clients about their investments in things like Pop.io and video call centers. But I also heard from friends who yearn for a sense of normalcy, right? One friend who told me she would never work another day from home in her life when this was over, right? And I really take that to be this kind of yearning for human to human interaction. In our firm, we heard from the market, right? We heard from credit unions asking us to look at more new potential branch projects at this point this year than last year or even any time in our history. So I think what I realized is that while there's certainly going to be a churn in the retail world, when it comes to banks, community banks and credit unions, there's still a very strong demand for retail branching. So your ability to connect with your customers and members in an authentic, almost empathetic way might be the largest way that you differentiate yourselves from the big banks. But with a significant wave of transaction volume moving to these digital channels, and probably even a chunk of your higher value interactions also moving into digital, I think credit unions and community banks are presented with a new challenge. Like, how do we drive traffic into the branches that we've invested so much money in? How do we make sure we still have the opportunity to connect with members so we can better understand their lives and collaborate on the right solution to their financial needs? And I read recently in Harvard Business Review that the future of success in bricks and mortar retail relies on your ability to give consumers a reason to come into your store. And I absolutely agree with this. I think it's just as applicable to a credit union as it is to someone like JCPenney, right? I can see credit unions getting this concept really, really right, but I think we can also see some getting it a little bit wrong. So what reason are you going to give consumers to come into your branch, and how will you craft an outward visual expression of that experience that your market's going to connect with? And there's, I believe, this fine line between a strategy that's going to convey your branch experience in the way that the market's going to identify with, and a strategy that ends up being a little gimmicky and not really having any resonance. And so that's today's conversation in a nutshell. How do you develop strategies that will be successful in driving traffic to your branch in the post-pandemic world? And so Catherine is a brand expert. So, and I think perhaps obviously, we believe that success in this area is going to start with a strong understanding of your organization's brand. So what we're going to do is have Catherine spend about 10 minutes giving us a brand crash course. So we all have a common context in this conversation, right? So how do you achieve brand clarity to anchor your branch strategies? And then we're going to transition into a conversation of how, this clarity of brand can drive a sense of place and become the strategies and tactics that you invest in. And then we'll wrap up with some audience Q&A. So I'm going to pass this conversation now over to Catherine and let her take it from here.
Thanks, Mark. And thanks for having me here today. This is kind of a little bit of a different thing to do work-wise, which I love. So I like to just try to demystify brand a little bit. It's this concept that people throw around a lot. People have very differing interpretations of it. And what I've noticed is that a lot of people just kind of equate brand and logo, how it looks, the colors, your logo. And that's what I'm talking about is actually at a much deeper level. So that's part of it. That's one way you might express it. But the way I think about brand is really what you stand for. What do you believe in? And what makes you stand out from other people who do something similar to what you do? So one way I like to kind of get people thinking about it is just with cars, right? I'm actually looking for a car right now, and there's so many choices. Any of them can get me from A to B when I'm allowed to leave my house. But some of those brands just evoke a feeling. And they've done that over time, a lot of times by, how they design their cars, how they market their cars. So if I say Volvo, most people are going to just instantly think safety, right? They've just developed this strong association. And it doesn't mean that other cars are not safe. It's just that they've kind of claimed that as that's their stake in the ground. Or if I said Subaru, which is very, very common in Seattle, it's very outdoorsy. They kind of, when you see a Subaru ad, it makes you think about throwing your dogs and your gear in the car and going out on adventure. It just kind of triggers that feeling in you. Or if you see a Tesla, you think, innovation, or maybe been pushing forward towards self-driving cars. So those are just a few examples. There are lots and lots. It's fun. If anyone wants to share you know, in the comments, like a car that has a really strong brand association. It's just a good way to kind of warm up and think about it. So
Sure.
it's, again, it's much more than just the logo. It's really that feeling that it gives you, the experience of it. Um, and you know, another thing about brand that I think is really important to keep in mind, and certainly in the way that I practice it, is um, you get to decide to some extent what your priorities are, but it's really how others perceive you. I mean, really, that is, it's not you that defines exactly what your brand is. It's how would other people, how do they see you fitting into your space? You know, how do you stand out or not? What kinds of impressions do they have about you? So you have to really be tuned in to those signals. Um, so I think I've, you know, I've touched on this, but there is really there's an emotional component to this. So certainly the features, the functions, the benefits, those are all important. But deep down, you know, brand is really like, what is that feeling that evokes? So Mark, I was thinking about when you took that trip to Patagonia, what kind of jacket did you get and why?
Right. Yeah. I had to have an Arc'teryx jacket, and I knew that it was going to be windy and rainy, and I was going to take it seriously, right? And so for me, it was like I'm kind of a cheapskate when it comes to outdoor clothing, right? And but it was just no question about it. I was going to buy an Arc'teryx jacket because I was taking the weather seriously, and I was not going to have it get in the way of a good time.
You were equipped, you were
I was
ready.
equipped. I was equipped,
Yeah,
right? I
and
was a professional.
I'm
Yeah.
sure it was functionally very well made, so it's a
Mhm.
quality item. One thing you touched on that is also at play here is that brand does allow you to command a premium price. Like people will kind of pay more if they
Sure.
feel like they're getting this richer experience.
Right, right.
And of course there are brands who, you know, part of their what they're offering might be a less expensive experience. There's a range, you know, for lots of different. There's a wide spectrum. Um, so I learned all this, as Mark mentioned, at Cranium, which I hope some of you are familiar with it. I wanted to share a picture of it because we just thought about that. I mean, we lived and breathed brand. It was a really unique place, and I was thinking about it in the context of credit unions because we did have a physical space. So hold on one sec. I'm just gonna pull this up real quick. Um, I think I'm gonna pull it up real quick. Okay, there's the button. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yep.
Okay, so this is one of our launch parties. And if anyone is not familiar with Cranium, it was a party game that brought everyone, you know, into the experience by using their unique talents. And when we moved our offices, when we kind of got our grown up office, we really wanted it to feel like you were walking into the game when you walked into the office. And so this was a party, we were celebrating a launch, but you can kind of see some of these details, right? It's like balloons and bright colors everywhere, and this little detail at the top, those are actually the lids of this special edition tin game that we did that are just lined up there. The game included drawing and sculpting. So at the bar where you walk in there, where people were waiting for a meeting, they could doodle on the whiteboard, like right on the table, or you know, mess around with clay, like they could kind of experience it. And this wasn't a retail outlet for us, but we had a lot of people coming into the space to test out the games. And so we just wanted them to walk in and go, wow, right? So and we just really cared about every single detail. Like this is all brand, right? It's all those opportunities to kind of make an impression in someone's mind. And of course, this wouldn't be right for every type of brand, but it was exactly right for Cranium. Um, so, you know, just in terms of like, how do you come up with this for your brand? This is just a really simple model that I use that we kind of walked through, and we did this work for Momentum. And and you want to sort of, you want to think about internally, you know, what is your vision for your business? What are those goals? What are you awesome at? You know, what do the people, what do the founders care about, or those stakeholders, like, and having clarity, and some, it just takes time to, like, you know, carve out and reflect on this and capture it and share. But like I said, it's also how you are perceived. And so you really need to get that customer voice in there. What do people think about you? What do they perceive that you do well and less well? Um, how do they think of you against your competitors? And it's really important to get that really candid feedback, sometimes hard, but super important. And then, you know, the third piece of it is just really thinking about that competitive context, looking at the industry, thinking about what those trends are, um, looking really in depth at what your competitors are offering and how they're talking about it and how they show up. What do they look like? What do they sound like? And what you're really looking for is that white space where you have an opportunity to kind of line up all these three things, right? What's true or authentic to you, you know, what's true or authentic to your customers at your best, and what's different from what other people are doing. And, you know, a couple of other tools that I mentioned in here are just doing an audit, which is just really like just thinking through every single way that you're showing up in the marketplace. And it's helpful to have a little fresh eyes perspective here. And then I also like to look outside of your category. So that's why it's kind of great that I think Mark invited me here. It's good to have that deep, deep understanding of your own category, but you can get some really cool ideas outside of that too. So when we did this work for Momentum, you know, we did all these things. We interviewed the stakeholders, we talked to customers, and we had some great aha moments, like, wow, you guys are really good at communication. You're really great listeners. You really give excellent advice on where to use technology and how to use it well. And so, you know, the output of that process is just a nice simple framework. You know, I'm just sharing kind of a high level here, but you have a starting point where you're just putting a stake in the ground. And Mark said this right at the beginning. Momentum is the only design build partner that takes a people-centric approach to helping credit unions and community banks thrive. And then you have these sort of pillars, which are really the brand DNA, those things that you've identified make you special, make you different. And just lost one of my AirPods. In the case of Momentum, it's really collaboration, connections, and community. So just a simple, this place that you always start that when you're doing this type of work. So let's see, just kind of thinking about, yeah, so you have this nice, you have this great framework, and I think through that you also figure out what you're not going to do, which in the case of Momentum, we articulated some things that would guide the decisions, right? We're not going to cultivate clients that are purely profit driven, but we want someone who's more purpose driven. That's important. Or we're not going to recommend technology without really thinking about how it affects the people. So we're just really thinking through all of that process. And it gives you clarity. It helps you attract the right kind of customers, partners, and employees. And it really accelerates your creative work. I mean, I think if you were trying to embark on a big building project or a website redesign, even without having spelled that out, you're going to end up kind of wasting time, right? You're going to be sort of cycling and making it really, you know, subjective, instead of having a starting place that articulates what you want, how you want to show up. So I don't know, Mark, I know you've mentioned that, like, this has been really valuable for making business decisions. Could you kind of share a little bit about that, how it's helped?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, gosh, I could talk for a long time about this, but I'll focus on maybe three key areas. One just being on our inbound marketing campaigns, right? Which we use a lot of thought leadership and content to drive that. So it helps us connect what we do with how we impact our partners' businesses, right?
Yeah.
That clarity helped. I think the second way, just in our sales our sales process, right? The sales discussions, proposal writing,
Right.
helped us differentiate, like, what's our true value proposition? What does the market care about, and kind of get beyond just the technical details of our process and our product. And I think lastly, it was for marketing to our team or recruits, right? We spend so much time doing that as well. And we think there's something special about ourselves, but we just weren't very good at conveying that, right? So that clarity helped us talk about our firm even to potential employees.
Yeah. Which is really important, right? Because it flows across everything, all of those touch points, internal and external. Um, so like, let's talk a little bit more about, it's been fun as we've worked together,
Right.
um, I think it's been so interesting to see different credit unions going through this kind of rebranding process
Mhm.
and coming up with a new identity, maybe making this shift from their historical roots to, a more modern presentation.
Right.
And again, there's, how it looks is certainly part of it, but um, it's been really interesting to hear examples of like how that brand can make people feel, like we were talking about that emotional component when they come into the branch. So can you think of some, an example where that was really powerful and noticeable?
Yeah, I think top of mind for me was the National Institutes of Health Federal
Uh-huh.
Credit Union, right? They have this strong connection between
Yeah.
how you feel as an employee or as a member and how they're trying to make you feel, right? This is clearly, authentically them when you walk into one of their spaces, right?
Yeah.
Um, might share my screen now. Maybe you'll see if I can make this happen.
Cool.
Maybe not. So here's an example
Nice.
here of National Institutes of Health Credit Union, right? So I think for them, right, you go back 10, 15 years and you take the word clinical, right? And the word clinical to me means really, austere and
Hmm.
cold and antiseptic, right? And
Hmm.
and but really today, when you talk about health and wellness, right, and you talk about people in the biomedical industry, these employees, these workers in that industry who bank with the credit union, they really think of themselves as caregivers and people who support well-being. It's really
Hmm.
ingrained in their DNA, right? How do we make people's lives better, like make them healthier? And so the
Yeah.
environment transitioned into this space that really helped people feel calm and feel relaxed, right? It's subtle, but it's different from the past, even for this credit union, where they had very nice looking spaces and a lot of branding on the walls that told you that they were part of the biomedical community.
Uh-huh.
But the space didn't really help you feel like you were part of, supporting people's health and wellness,
I
if
mean,
that makes sense.
totally. I can't stop looking at the green wall. That's
Right.
so cool. And the plant in the background, like those are things that are, I think, scientifically proven to make you feel the way you're describing, but I got that sense even from seeing the picture of it. That's really
Right.
cool. That's awesome. And how about thinking about the employees showing up to work there? Do you sort of notice that shift in their experience? Like it's great to be focused on the customers, but I think, what comes
Right.
to mind for me is for the customers to get great service, the
Right.
people who are serving them have to,
Right.
be feeling energized, inspired, all of those things.
Yeah,
So
I
do
think
you see that?
you're hitting the nail on the head, right? I mean, that's really the reason why someone comes into the branch, right? Is for help from another person,
Yeah.
right? So if the branch can also help the employees themselves, um, psychologically, right, be in a better state of mind, be more engaged with the work they're doing, that's going
Hmm.
to take you a long way, right? And you see that in a branch like this. Or you commonly we see this with clients where you invest in a location and then that becomes the magnet location for staff, and that's the place people want to
Yeah,
work, right? They talk to each other, and you hope that there's
definitely.
reasons for that even beyond the aesthetics, right? It's making sure that the branch is a tool, right? The spaces and the tools within the branch are easy for your employees to navigate and they know how to
Hmm.
use them to support a better interaction with a member, right?
Yeah, right. I can imagine that the design can kind of make that better or make it worse, right?
Exactly.
It's either
Exactly.
flowing with it or you're working against it or fighting it. And when you
Sure.
get that feeling of flow, I bet that's really evident. I mean, I can certainly think of, walking into different stores or banks where you either have that feeling of, oh, this is all, this is feeling really good, or I don't know what's happening
Right.
here for sure.
Exactly. Exactly.
um, I was thinking about too, like, you mentioned how a lot of those banking activities are shifting to digital, and
Right.
certainly personally I'm wanting to do more and more digitally.
Right.
But when they show up in that branch, what do you think what are they looking for now, and how can the space really deliver that, make it
Right.
easier?
Well, I
What do you
mean,
see?
again, they're looking for a connection. I think a human to human connection, right? So
Yeah,
you want to make sure you're eliminating barriers in that interaction for the member, right?
yeah,
Digital, physical, psychological barriers, right? Making it a
right,
place that people actually want to be.
yeah,
So if you think about technology, you don't your member is not going to the branch to have a virtual or digital experience with you, and
right,
that's a way that I think technology or gadgets can sometimes get in the way, right? I think touch screens are a perfect example. You know, they want a digital experience, they would have done it at home. But if the touch screen is augmenting your branch experience, then have at it, right? So if you say you have a busy location and a busy lobby,
yeah,
and your touch screen is used for queuing, then you can help eliminate line anxiety, so
yes,
long as it's easy to use, right? It's familiar, it's clear, and then
yeah,
it's not a barrier, it's a plus. I think another example, even
right,
with digital, is the work with geofencing and personal digital devices, right? So I like it when, if I'm near a business and I'm patronizing and I get a marketing offer on, say, Instagram, right? I like receiving that offer because I usually do want to use it. And I think credit unions
mhm,
can do the exact same thing. Use the digital tool for the quick marketing messaging so that you can let your employees maybe focus more on the conversations than trying to sell a product.
yes,
So
that definitely
um,
resonates with me. Yeah, that makes sense.
I have a thought here as well. As we're talking about kind of the brand experience flowing across all of these touch points, the physical and the digital. I mean, can you
Mhm.
speak to the opportunity that credit unions have here to find this kind of intersection and use it to drive traffic into the
Yeah.
branch?
I mean, what's really cool actually, so one of the strongest setups for word of mouth marketing is when you can have both physical and digital touch points. That's just a unique strength. And not all brands have it. Like, I work with a lot of brands that are only digital, only in tech, and we're kind of trying to invent, how can we come up with some places where you can actually interact with your customers face to face, because that's very powerful. I mean, it makes it more memorable. And so, just that alone, you kind of already have that. So that's
Right.
great. So to me, really the opportunity is to think about how that experience can kind of reinforce each other and create that consistent brand feeling. And you
Yeah.
gave some really great examples, Mark. It's not just having digital touch points for the sake of it. It's like really putting yourself in the customer's shoes and thinking about, is this improving? Is this helping them do what they need to get done more quickly or easily? Or is it detracting? Is it going to break? Is it, confusing? And so really paying attention to that is important.
Well, it's
Um,
funny because when I talk with our partners, sometimes I almost hear them lamenting that they have to invest in both, right? And I'm thinking,
mm,
well, Yeah, but look at the opportunity you
Yeah,
have now to connect with people in these two different environments. And think of a brand like Tide laundry detergent. I mean, you're not
right.
going to the Tide store and you're not going to Tide.com, right? So, I mean, think of
Yep.
all the opportunities you now have to, like, express your brand and attract people to you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so can you think of any examples, maybe of non-financial institutions that do this really
Oh,
well?
yeah. One that I really love is Pagliacci Pizza. So it's this is a Seattle thing. So I apologize for anyone who's not in Seattle, but you can extrapolate your favorite local pizza chain
Oh boy.
and around. And it, it's so good. I just tried turning off my video. Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. All right. We'll try it off for a minute.
Okay,
So Pa did I was talking about
sure.
Pagliacci Pizza,
Hmm.
and, they're a Seattle institution, and I've it's really been cool to see over the past decade or so. They have definitely invested in both their physical locations. They've really just created these very beautiful architect design spaces that grab your attention and are very pleasant to be in.
Hmm.
And they've also done an amazing job with their digital and kind of having the experience flow across both.
Right.
Um, if I can go in and order very easily, or if I'm at home, I can order from my phone or from my laptop, and it remembers what I ordered the last time, and it's got my payment saved, and it knows my address, and it knows kind of where I like to pick up, and all of those things just make it a lot faster and easier for me.
Right.
And then they do this great digital marketing where they have seasonal specials, and they'll say, limited time only, come get the special fall, pizza with hand foraged morels or whatever. So that gives me a reason to order or go in, and they actually changed their loyalty program. So it used to be just a physical punch card, and now it's all digital. So if I buy online or if I show up to the store, it all accumulates and builds that long-term loyalty, which is really what this is all about, all of this
Right.
investment in brand. It's like making it super easy for me to buy, remembering my preferences,
Right.
um, you know, showing me all of the great new pizzas that they're making and giving me a reason to go back. So
Sure.
I think they've just done a really great job. You can
So
get a sense from their website if anyone's interested in seeing it.
one thing that I think Pagliacci's also does is they kind of connect you to other businesses in the community. So kind of
Yeah.
almost accessory businesses or accessory
Yep.
functions. And I think that is definitely a trend for credit union branches is this investment in accessory spaces to drive branch traffic as a leading objective.
Yeah.
And I do see this executed with varying success, right? So you've got
Right.
amenities that range from business meeting space to a coffee shop. I've even seen a tap room. But how do you make the
Cool.
business case, right? How do you make the business case to invest in something like this accessory space? What is going to lead to success?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, I think it's important to keep in mind that a lot of these is difficult to you're not necessarily going to have a short-term lift in these whatever your key business metrics are. But what you're doing by adding something like that is you are creating more reasons for people to come in and get to know you and interact with you
Right.
and to have a great experience and to experience that service. Um, and those things over time really build those positive impressions. They build word of mouth. They get people talking, and they create that feeling. Because I think what you invest in your physical space is really a reflection of your priorities. So
Mhm.
if you're adding a community room and you're actively kind of making things happen there, getting people to hold their book groups or, host their webinars or have a community meeting and really making that happen, you're keeping yourself, your brand really top of mind for
Right.
everyone who visits
Sure.
there, you
Sure.
know? And you have an opportunity to show warmth, hospitality, service, generosity, all those things that I think credit unions are fundamentally great at.
Right.
Um, and to have a reason to experience that, even if I'm maybe not opening a new account on that day, I will be at some point. I'm going to bring my teenage son
Sure.
in, and
At
those
some
things
point,
stick in your
right?
mind.
But
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not exactly a do X and then get Y type of investment, right?
That's where it's tricky. I think, yeah, digital marketing can be a little bit more, try test the input and see the
Mhm.
result. And I,
Yeah.
I think you just have to kind of think about if that makes sense for your brand. If you
Sure.
want it to be a place that can provide that
Right.
sense of connection and
Sure.
community, then that would be a really great investment, as long as again you're activating it and
Right. So
reminding people that you have it, making them feel welcome when they're there.
yeah. I mean, if it's a little harder to measure that, right, do X get Y return, I want to think about, other ways that you can
Yeah.
ensure that your success, I mean, that your investment is successful or is worthwhile, right? Because I think that most credit unions and banks are really considering this tactic, and
Mhm.
it's because of a mismatch between space and need for space. So lease spaces, branch sizes are only going to get so small, right, in terms of the available real estate, but your function now for transactions is doesn't take up all the space. So credit unions
Yeah.
find themselves with accessory space and they want to do something with it, right?
Yeah.
They want to have it work for them. But so any other tips on like how that doesn't become just a white elephant?
Well, I think again, if you're leading from your brand of what you're about, um, that's a great place to start. And I think that'll also help you avoid just doing what everyone else is doing. Because I do think sometimes there's a tendency to either everyone's emulating Apple or everyone's emulating a particular brand that's
Right.
been, successful, or everyone's following this best practice.
Mhm.
And some best practices are helpful, but if everyone's doing the same thing, um, that it can all start to blend in and become, then you're not standing out anymore. So I think
Sure.
if you're leading with your brand, um, and you're really kind of thinking about what would be valuable to your members, and you can ask them, that's a great tactic too. You can sort of ask them, what would you love to see here, would
Right.
you
Oh, yes,
just
true.
asking is super helpful. I feel like you've told me about a couple of cool examples. Like, isn't there a credit union who did an curated art gallery or something like that?
Right. Yeah, that's let me see if I can share that here.
That was really
Um,
cool.
yeah, that's Verity Credit Union, and I think for them it works
Yeah.
so well because of how well they curate it and kind of keep on top of it. So
Yeah.
they really are trying to tell a story, and again, if I think really signal to the members in the branch, right, that they care about the community, but it's more than just saying here's some space, have at it, right? It's taking it to the
Yes.
next level. I just grabbed this
Mm,
off of the Verity Twitter today, right? I don't know if you
nice.
see this, right? This is a gentleman who's showing his art at the West Seattle branch, right? And so they really go full circle to tell the story on Twitter, on
Yeah.
LinkedIn, on their website, on their blog, and then the West Seattle blog ends up picking it up.
That's
But
great.
it's more than just here, put some things up on the wall. Like an example, another example here, I think would be CBC Credit Union. This is down in Ventura County, California. And I don't know if you can see this way in the background here, but that's actually a Dunkin' Donuts, right?
Oh, wow.
Right. So
That's
they
a
partner,
reason to go in.
right. It's a reason to go in. but it's interesting. It's not, you know, we talk about health and well-being and like, well, what did donuts really signal about your investment and well-being, right? But for them, it was more about being approachable, right? To
Yeah.
anybody, right? So part of the community, every person, right? It could really, you know, their baking services aren't just for some upper class type of individual. They're really
Yes.
there to help everybody, right? And so
Yeah.
that adjacency to Dunkin' was something that they really thought would help, again, kind of get more eyes and more conversations going with people who maybe were underbanked.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean, just I'm just going to go back to the National Institutes of Health. It would be dissonant if they opened up a Dunkin' Donuts, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Because that's what their brand is about. So I actually
Right.
love that you showed that example,
Right.
because
Yeah.
that would not be right. That's not leading with the brand. Whereas having the green wall is.
Yes.
But in this case, yeah, that's a great way to be approachable, to be friendly, to make people smile, and the way that's, that people will remember.
Yep.
Um, and
So
I'm just, oh, sorry, I was
go
just
ahead.
thinking about the real quick, there's something about the curating the art and the community room, which are both, um, they both allow flexibility and change over time, which is
Exactly.
another nice thing.
Mhm.
You can try different things, you can change it up. It's not just a big investment that's going to be fixed for all time, and then it either works or it doesn't. So I think that's an
Right.
interesting thing to pay attention to.
Right. Well, I think, and you kind of mentioned, that kind of leads me to think of, you know, kind of a common mistake in this area that I can think of, and that would be, you know, as you connect to the community, that it just becomes a cliche, right? So that you just
Right.
are community, just so you can put the high school football team's, you know, picture on the wall, or you know, talk about a monument that everyone's seen 1,000 times in the community. It's nice and it might remind people of the community, but it maybe isn't getting you the mileage that you're really looking for. And so I think you know, our advice around that, so how you go from cliche to something that's meaningful about your brand, is really kind of think about what is your place in the community. And I was in a
Mhm.
Starbucks actually in Baton Rouge recently that made me think about this, right? They had these metrics around the number of people who had touched your coffee beans along the way, right? And so that was their community. What was the coffee growers and the people who are roasting the coffee and making the coffee, and
Mhm.
I think you can also, you know, for credit unions, really think about, you know, what is your place in the community? How do you help the community? What is important to you in the community? And if you can kind of highlight those things, you have a more authentic connection um,
Definitely. Yeah,
to it.
that's great.
So, can you think of any other pitfalls that would kind of wrap up this conversation?
Oh, I know we could talk for hours, I
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
but I guess I think maybe one thing that I would just call out is, and we touched on it a little bit, but just how important it is to bring the employees into that experience as well.
Mhm.
So I think of an example of one of my clients, who also had the benefit of having a physical space. It was a winery where people could visit, and they had a beautiful experience and gave really great service. But one of the projects we were doing together, we uncovered a disconnect where, the staff, we figured out that the staff was being incentivized by selling new club memberships. They would get a bonus. And so when they sold a club membership and then the club member came back, and the server realized they were already a member, they're kind of like, oh, okay, I'm going to go focus on this other table. So these people who had actually paid and invested weren't getting that warm welcome, because they weren't going to buy a club membership that day. But you can only buy that membership one time. So we had to kind of both tweak the model of how that bonus was being structured, but also just, train the employees and say, really, this is the brand experience that we want to have. We want every single person who walks through this door to feel like they are at home. They are welcome to stay. They can ask any question they want, even if you're busy. Like, that's really important. And so it illuminated both some structural things, but also just the importance of making sure that that brand is really everyone's a shared value that everyone can kind of own and feel responsible for.
Yes.
So we actually reworked the whole employee handbook to take out a bunch of rules and make it more about just empowering each server to really delight the customers in
Yes.
the way that felt appropriate. So I think getting that it's not just your logo, it's not just your style guide, it's really bringing everyone into that experience is the opportunity.
Yeah, it sounds like most things do, I find, kind of come back to your culture, right? And the people
Yeah.
who are
Yeah.
delivering your culture to your customer.
Yes.
Invest in that and you really can't go wrong. You find that over and over
Absolutely.
again. Well, I
Yep.
think as we're just kind of at the end of our session here, and so I'm going to take a couple questions, and then we're recording this session. We'll send it out to all attendees. So please send us some questions in the chat. I've got one right now. Any opportunities for kind of innovation, brand-driven innovations you can think of?
Mm. Well, I always feel like customer frustrations are a good inspiration here. So I think of some of the things that frustrate me about banking right now. And again, you should ask your customers. I'm just going to share some of mine. But, things I've noticed are like, it's frustrating when I can't do the same thing on my phone that I can on my laptop. Or if I have to call, that's kind of a deal breaker for
Mhm.
me right now.
Right.
Um, but, when I go in there, um, I'm thinking about the times that I do go in. Like I actually did take my teenage son in to set up a new account and, you know, it was fine. We made it memorable, but it would have been really cool if it felt a little more celebratory somehow. He's getting his first account. He was picking out his card and,
Mhm.
I think about going to Nordstrom and they make that experience of getting your kid's first pair of shoes really special. They bring out the balloon and it's like a thing. You get your picture taken, and that kind of felt like a missed opportunity to me. It's a big milestone, for me and for him, and we were there and
Well, I think we might have lost Catherine there. I might answer that question as well. Here we got the question popping up real quick. So, Catherine, maybe you want to stop your video. I'm not sure if you can
yep,
hear me. Okay, so I got a question. What about the
sorry
effects
about
impact the value of the credit union shared branching network? That's interesting. So Catherine, you might not be too familiar with this, but there's many credit unions, right? They actually can deliver banking services to customers, right? Members who are not their own member, right? I'm not sure if we lost you there, Catherine.
I got most of what you said, but that's okay. Keep
Right.
talking. Yep.
So, what are the effects, impact, and value of the credit union shared branching network, right? So
Okay.
I'm a little puzzled actually with that question. I'm trying to think here.
So you could basically give services to like, is there a network
Well, right,
where
exactly,
if
right.
I'm a member of a different credit union, but I come into your credit union, I can do
Yeah.
certain things. That's
The- the-
interesting.
yeah, it comes up in a lot of conversations we have with our clients,
Yeah.
and I'll say there's almost a wink and a nod around. There's a rule here. You're not supposed to directly solicit or market towards another credit union's members, right?
Yeah.
But if your employees and your credit union is delivering a really great experience in your branch, that just may be a reason that a member of one credit union may choose to switch to another. But as I think about it, this might be a topic I'm going to maybe stay away from just a little bit, because it's a it's a bit of a complex issue, right?
It is.
The
I think
shared networks.
I think your guidance is right though. I mean, my quick advice would just be, stay true to your brand. Whoever
Right.
is coming in those doors,
Yeah.
you should give the caliber of service that you would give your own customers, because that makes an impression. Like if they're
Exactly.
in your space, you should, you know, deliver that level of experience. And as Mark said, that could pay off at some point. But
Absolutely.
either way, it's an opportunity to exercise that experience that your brand is about.
Alrighty, well, I think we're gonna wrap it
Cool.
up today, and I appreciate you
Okay.
taking the time, Catherine. I know you're across the country visiting your folks
All
this
right.
today, so thanks for joining in, and thanks to everyone who joined our conversation as well. So the video will be sent, recording of the webinar will be sent to everyone who participated, and there'll also be a link available on the insights section of our website. So like I mentioned, a couple more parts of this series coming up around the digital future and also setting market strategies. So please join in for those discussions as well. All righty, thank you.
Great. Thanks for having me. Sorry about the weird internet.
Oh, no, you did pretty good. Great, I
Okay.
appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
All right.
All right, bye.
Okay.